Hey everybody, this is going to be episode 4 of my videos, which I don't really have a title for it yet, but I wanted to lay down some ground rules, not ground rules, but I just wanted to lay down like a framework so everybody knows where I'm coming from on this, in relation to modern action figures and vintage action figures, specifically the properties that are of the 80s that are being redone today in some form or fashion, whether it's a complete reboot, with new tooling, totally new sculpts, or it's a retro version, which is, they're probably not one-to-one because I think they have to retool some of these because I know tools don't last for very long, but they're pretty close to the originals. Across the board, everything that's going on currently right now. Most properties that I see out there, if not every property I see out there, that's on every shelf, or if you go to every company website, you look at their brands, everything is retro, or everything is nostalgic for things of the 80s, or some close proximity of that, whether it's maybe late 70s, maybe into the 90s, but somewhere in that ballpark, 70s, 80s, 90s, So here's my issue with the way that the companies, now some of them have got it close, but this is my issue with how people lay things out today, how these companies are rolling out these nostalgic properties again. Like I always been saying about the Masters of the Universe, I think they did a pretty good job. There was a few little minor things that I think they should have done differently, but overall I think they did it pretty good. Example, if you look at the the first first 8 figures, I believe it came out. It was 8 or 6, I can't remember. Let's see, it was He-Man, Skeletor, Teela, Evelyn, Man-at-Arms, Beast-Man, I think, okay, 6. The original 1982 line was 8. It was essentially all of those figures with the exception of Evelyn wasn't until the 83 line, and they had Zodiac, remember, as I call him, Zodiac, and Merman, I think, were the exceptions. Let's see, what was the original 82? He-Man, Skeletor, Man-at-Arms, Beast-Man, Zodiac, Stratos, Teela, and Merman. Did I mention Merman? I know there was 8. I think the way they said it on the Toys That Made Us, the gun guy was talking, he said they needed 8 villains and 8 heroes to make it even. So when they rolled out the Motu Origins, it pretty much followed the original one for the most part. Pretty good. And like I said, I've only collecting 82 to 84, so I got them all now, and they're still producing, so they kind of, sort of, in a roundabout kind of way, stuck to that. They made stuff like Scared Low, Ninja, or a few characters that came out way late, later on in the line back in the 80s, but they came out with them early in the in Origins. It's fine. I would have liked to have seen, and this goes across the board for all of it, and the best example I can use for this is G.I. Joe, because I kind of made a thing that I wanted to kind of show everybody. But with He-Man, or any of them, I would like to see them just follow how they were released originally. They got popular for a reason. It's not like saying, hey, if we don't put out Scareglow in the second wave, the whole line's doomed. Nobody's going to want these, because there's a million Scareglow fans out there, and they all want Scareglow ASAP, right? I highly doubt that that's a situation. With G.I. Joe is another example, which of course I'll get in more in detail with G.I. Joe today, but with G.I. Joe, by not putting Storm Shadow in the first wave, I don't think it's going to sink the ship. You know, the plane's not going to come out of the sky if we don't have Roadblock in the first series. So I want to show you something, a couple of things. So here, this is a Stalker retro figure, you know, with the 25th edition style sculpt and articulation. It came out, I don't know what, last year or 2022, maybe 2021, I can't remember. But, you know, it's a decent sized figure. Now, I don't care so much that the card is a thinner stock than the original card. That doesn't bother me, because for the most part, I'm going to open this up. I didn't open up this one because I bought 2 of them, but I'm going to open it up. And even if I keep it mint on card, I'm probably going to, at some point, put that in a case. If I want to keep them, I'll put them in a collector's case, you know what I mean? It's gonna straighten out the card, and the card's not gonna get touched. It's not gonna get dinged. Nothing's gonna happen to it, right? So one of those two things is gonna happen. I'm gonna open it, or it's gonna go in plastic, just like a comic book. And whether or not the card is, you know, thick enough or thin enough, you know, who cares? I don't care. I know a lot of people do, but I personally don't care. But what I do care about, you know, I think not putting a Real American Hero on the front was a mistake. I also find the biggest grievance is the back of the card, and obviously the file card. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a government mandate out there, or is there some EPA law or some federal federal restriction, you know, laid down by the powers that be, that says you must have the card, or sorry, brief information about the character repeated 5 or 6 times in different languages? Is there some law about that? Can they not just put what they want on the back? I understand they want to appeal to other markets, you know, so why don't they just print the whole thing in Spanish, print the whole thing in German, print the whole thing in whatever, what have they got on there, probably French. Why don't they just do that? You know, it's easy. That's what they did back in the day. You know, I mean, in England it was called Action Force. They had a completely different title. Still sold like hotcakes. I bet you most British dudes that are my age collected them and still like them today. You know, but yeah, I mean, there's some great information on those file cards. File cards were really cool back in the day, and by just doing, you know, it's just got brief information, and it just repeats itself. It gives you one small, barely even a sentence about it, a couple of his, you know, stats, you know, his role, his specialty, primary, secondary specialty, birthplace. That's it. They don't give you any of the other information. My other issue, now I like that they have the original little cross-sell here. You know, I don't really have so much an issue with this one, because obviously they're going to do the waves that come out. But because this card is so huge and they have to pack in so much information, and like I said, all of this other information, it's in every language, and, you know, do they need to have all that information? Can't they have everything that's been out so far like they did before? I mean, maybe, you know, I know in the original ones they kind of started to drop some of the first 82 line and started focus down there once they're on like the 8th wave, right? Or 5th wave, I don't know exactly when they started changing that, but that's fine. But that's not really that much of a big deal. I mean, they've got the original ones there, that's fine. But this card has got to go. I mean, they got to go back to the original card. I mean, everything else about it's fine. It's perfect. Why pay that much attention to detail to the original and change various things? Like I said, unless there's something that I'm not aware of, but, you know, I would assume that they could do whatever they wanted. I don't know. But, so, you know, and here's the Duke's file card when I cut off of his thing, you know, all this information. Why even cut this out? Why even have a file card of this size to go in a little file card set when it's just like, I don't need the same sentence repeated 5 times in different languages? I don't understand. And here's another grievance with the hiss, right? This is the blueprint. look how size of it is to the file card. This is the blueprint. It doesn't even look like a blueprint. They put the graph paper, image in the background to sell that. They printed it in relatively the same colors they printed the original blueprint, but that's all. That's it, right? I know you want to save some trees, but you can use recycled paper. Is it really that much of a cost cut to not give us the full-size original blueprint? I mean, it's just a JPEG that you just print on paper. Buy recycled paper, if you don't want to cut down any more trees. It seems like it's a no-brainer. So I put this together. I didn't do this when I started these videos. I did this a few weeks ago because I was bored. And I got some new printer ink and I wanted to test out my printer. So I made this little package up. What's in it is, you can probably see some of the things that are in it. But first and foremost, remember, we're going to talk about my experience with G.I. Joe. And the reason I printed this up specifically was I had very few of these figures growing up. Because, like I said, I didn't jump on G.I. Joe till 83. 82, I was still, not on board. However, in 82, I did buy a comic book. It says June. I can't remember exactly when it was. But I remember buying the comic book that year while the toys were coming out. And so this is not a real comic book. Nobody freak out. And I'm not selling these. I'm not trying to make a profit on these. If you want to make one, make it yourself. It's pretty simple. I did. I could tell you how to do it sometime if you ask me. But so what it is, it's a booklet size reproduction printed out and saddle stitched of the original G.I. Joe comic from Marvel. It came out perfect for the most part. The only issue, and this is just regular inkjet paper, this isn't fancy Hudson paper or anything like that. The only issue of the back cover, inside, the ink was kind of adjusting itself, I think, on that page. Came out a little squirrely, but it was more of a test, really, than, and it's enough of it's there for me to, to achieve what I wanted to do. My only issue is because of the way the paper count was, I screwed up, and the pit was supposed to go across, as a full page spread, and then ended up like that. So outside of that, I made this up because, like I said, this is the starting area. This is where the line started, was with this comic book. They didn't have the cartoon yet. The mass device didn't come out until fall of '83. So this is what we had, and I loved it, and most people did, and it got very popular very quick, and it did this organically because kids love this. Kids of the '80s. Kids of today, probably not so much. It was a different time period back then, which I'll get into, which kind of plays into their strategies for what they're doing. But and now let's say now the figures come out, right? So these ones have pictures of the figures on it. The only characters I had in this entire set, I believe, I had Cobra Soldier, Cobra Officer. I think I had Rock and Roll, Scarlet Snake. No, I never had the original Snake Eyes. I only had the Ninja one from the other line. But so here's that. I double-sided printed them. This is kind of like what I did for my Jedi cards. They're all 6x9. I even rounded the edges on these ones to make it look a little more authentic. But there's Zap. This is Zap, right? Yeah, this is Zap. Cobra Soldier, I believe. Yeah, or Cobra. And again, in the back of these, here's the Stalker one. The Stalker's got all of the information that was on the original card, including the original cross-sell. Now, you don't see all of this information. Like I said, if this is something that they have to do, I guess, what are you going to do? Does it have to be on the back of here? It's fine print. Can it be finer print? You know, I guess, you know, I mean, they already made the logo smaller. They can make the logo smaller. Again, Real American Hero. They could still fit a Real American Hero in this black gutter right here easily. But that was the original. And Cobra Officer. There's Snake Eyes himself right there, the original Commando version. Breaker. Good old Scarlet. There's the figure on there. Her file card on the back. Grunt. I think I have a Grunt also still in the package somewhere. Who was the mortar guy? What was it? Short Fuse, that's his name. Rock and Roll and Flash. Okay, so these are the original. Was it 12? I can't remember. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11, and then I think the guys in the came with the vehicles was like 13 or whatever. But okay, that was the original line of G.I. Joes. Here's my thing. If they're going to do the retro, if they wanted to do the retro line, right, which obviously they've given up on, if they wanted to bring back the O-rings, which inevitably is what I would like them to do, they said they were going to, they kind of hinted like they were going to, and then they pulled the plug for no reason. And they're not telling us what they're doing with it. Okay, so, plus they're charging $20 a figure. Seriously. I'll pay the $20 a figure, right, if they come out with the right figures. And why don't they just come out with the original 1982 line first? Just like He-Man, come out with the 1982 line. Transformers, come out with the original 1984 line. I can keep going. All of the major toy properties. Why don't you just do the original releases, how they came out originally? You know, because sure, there's a popular character in the third or fourth wave a few years down the line, but do you really think it's going to sink the whole line because they didn't put Storm Shadow in the first line? I don't think so. You got Snake Eyes. Now you have something to look forward to. You know he's coming because you know how they were put out. Now you have something to look forward to. One thing, I love these. I showed you the Return of the Jedi one I did yesterday. This one, the file I used really wasn't that great, but I made the original catalog. And again, do this. Where's my catalog? Come on, this stuff is just paper. This stuff is so cheap to produce. It's just paper. It's just printing a JPEG on paper, right? You can get recycled paper. You don't have to get fancy paper. Heck, this is inkjet printer paper, right? You could use any kind of paper. Just give us something. This has got to be the most minimal investment. It's not plastic, so, you know, they want to not put a lot of plastic in their stuff. It's not plastic, it's paper. Give us this. I want this. I want to see this. You know, sure, I can go online. But you know what? When you go online, on almost every single one of these toy lines and one of these sites, nothing makes sense online. Nothing on the back of their cross-sells makes sense, right? I want to know right off the bat, what's in the line? What's out? Who are the characters I can look forward to that are out right now, right? I would prefer them to all come out at once and come out in 1 year, then they just wait till the next year to produce the next wave of the figures, right? But if they want to piece them out every quarter, you know, 4 figures a quarter, that's fine. Or 3 figures a quarter, if they want to only do 12, that's fine. You know, make that known to people right off the bat, saying, hey, this is how it works. Put it in the catalog. Have a whole page, a little page in here, and just say, this is how the production's, you know, tentatively going to go. You know, it's a work in progress. It may change. You know, don't hold us to it. We're trying to do it this way. You know, I think people will be understanding. You just a little more transparent. Let us know what's going on. When something, you know, something goes haywire, that's okay. We can deal with it. You know, just let us know that you're at least trying to do things more efficiently and more. If you're, like I said, if you're trying to play on the nostalgic strings, this right here is just as important as who you're putting out. This right here is just as important as the retro card back. The file card, the real file card is just important as everything else. Speaking of file cards, I also printed out, I won't go through them all, but I also printed out all of the file cards, the original file cards, and trimmed them up to size. These are 1-to-1 ratio, I believe. I took an original card and they're pretty darn close. I'm within maybe a couple of millimeters off. But and then of course I do have some of the drivers in here. Clutch, General Hawk. I got those. Like I said, it's supposed to be just this little package, and I'm going somewhere with this. Let's get to the vehicles. The only one I had to print oversized was Mobat. Now I mean, it's just a print. It's double-sided, but it's a print to the actual size of the actual board. You'll notice I had to stitch it together. I mounted this on poster board to give it some weight to it, and then stitched the two pieces together to make it oversized. It was just done on an 8.5 by 11 printer. It's got the file card. It's got everything on it. Here was the main vehicle of the line. Here's the flak, double-sided, jump pack, ram. I think the ram is a little off. I think when I did something in the in my software and I kind of accidentally did something, it brung it in too much. It kind of obscured it. I can always reprint it and make a new one, but like I said, this was just testing out stuff. I was also retesting my printer to see if it still works. I hadn't used my printer in 8 years, so I wanted to make sure it still worked okay. PAL, the missiles, the vamp. Again, I don't know why this wasn't out first before the Ostriker. I mean, I don't know whose decision that was. And that's the problem. Whose decision is this? I think the guy in Retro Blasting, Mike, he mentioned it, and he said that this stuff looks like it was put together by a soccer mom, making a Super Bowl party. I don't know if those are exact words, but I understand what he's talking about. Yeah, it does. It seems like this is your mom put this together. Hey, I know Jimmy, he really likes G.I. Joe. He's going to have a G.I. Joe party with a G.I. Joe cake, and I'm going to put together things based on what I see, which is totally not accurate. It has that feel to it. Like somebody who put this together was not 10 years old or 9 years old or 11 years old in 1982 and lived through it. That's what it seems like. Or if they had no interest in G.I. Joe and they didn't collect it. Which, again, it'd be pretty hard to find a kid who was 9 years old in 1982 or 10 years old in 1982 who didn't have a few Joes in his room. Of course, last thing but not least, I printed out the full size, not these things that came with the retro, but I printed out for the most part, full size. I don't know if I don't think any of them were bigger than 8.5 by 11, so I'm just assuming that they all would fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Some of them are a little bit better than others as far as quality of the image files that I got. I basically just went on and did image searches for all this stuff and found a bunch of stuff. I was assuming that most of it's accurate since I didn't have anything really to compare it to. So this little package I made, that's 1982 G.I. Joe. Look how nice, and then including the comic book. Look how nice everything is. Everything makes sense. Everything's very concise. Why didn't they just do that when they started this retro line? Why didn't they just do that? I mean, it's not that Hasbro's incapable of following, that model. I mean, for the most part, with the Star Wars from the original Star Wars figures, We got all 12. You know, they came out the first 6 first. You know, we just got the final 6. They should have done it all together, but they didn't. That's fine, but we got all the original 12, right? Why can't we get the original 12 or 11 or whatever it was of these guys? I just don't understand why they can't do it. And as you noticed, G.I. Joe is about vehicles. It's not about just figures. I think Larry Hama in that one, I don't know if it was in the Toy Galaxy, or the Plastic Galaxy, or what it was, but he said, you know, that the figures were, they lost money on the figures, that they were just not an afterthought, but they were just a thing that they did to sell vehicles. The profit margin, the money was in the vehicles. But apparently it's the opposite now. The money's in the action figures because we'll charge them $20 a piece for it, and we just won't make any vehicles. You know, if we do, maybe you might get one. But now it's like, hey, you put out the Hiss, you put out the Ostriker, $25, okay? You know, how did it go from that to $227 for a HasLab Sky Striker? Really? Within like a very short period of time? It went from that to that? You know, they came out with the Stinger, the Cobra Jeep. I didn't know that. Nobody did. By the time I even knew it was, I was following this stuff every single day. What's coming out? What's coming out? I want to see the stuff. You're trying to tell me I somehow, you know, went to the bathroom for 5 minutes, you know, or, you know, while I was sleeping, suddenly you put out the Stinger and it's instantly sold out and you're never going to do another version of it again? And you're not, you know, I have to pay $100 for it for collector's prices on eBay? What? Come on. You're a billion-dollar company. You know, I thought to myself, maybe it's because they're publicly traded. Maybe back when they did this stuff, they weren't publicly traded, so they didn't have to appease their shareholders every 3 months. But guess what? They've been publicly traded since the 60s. I don't know the date exactly, but it's late 60s. You know, when they had the original 12-inch toy line. And they had Barbie and whatnot. They went public then. So they were public. They had to, you know, please, this is the wrong one. They had to please shareholders every quarter when these things were originally produced. You know, it was a different team, a team with, you know, I don't want to say it, but a team with real talent, you know, real innovators, people that knew what they're doing. You know, the one brother was in charge. As soon as he dies, the other brother takes over and he fires all the original staff, apparently. I don't know if how true that story is. But, you know, they get rid of the entire people who created it in the first place that made it popular and hired a bunch of new people. Why? It's not like they were, like, in the verge of retirement. You know, these guys were probably, you know, 30s. Maybe they were in their 40s when the brother died, and, you know, as the toy line switched gears, you know, or went into the 90s, they're still working. You know, it boggles my mind. Boggles my mind why they just can't do things like this. If I was in charge, obviously I'm not, I would have done that. I would have said, here, I would have put out the vehicles. Everything that came out in 1982, I would have put out in 2022. Everything, including the catalog, including the Mobat, everything. I would have done one-to-one, the best one-to-one creations we could do. If we had to retool everything, retool everything. You're trying to say that that wouldn't sell. You're trying to say that that wouldn't be popular. You're trying to say you wouldn't make potentially even more money doing that than what they came up with. Somewhere somebody dropped the ball. You know, or maybe they never had the ball to begin with. But I think that modern toys, as much as they love them, and there's so much out now, and obviously 99% of it is just preying off of people like me with this nostalgia bug that they've got to fill. You know, it's not for kids. No matter how much they say it is not for kids. And if they're going to do that, we all were there once. We know how things go, right? We've got patience too. We'll sit back and you try to give us exactly what you gave us 40 years ago, if you drop the ball or something happens, right? I understand. Just be transparent about it. Hey, this is what happened, right? You know, hey, unfortunately, we can't make this vehicle because the tooling's destroyed, and this is the new tooling we came up, and it's not exactly perfect, right? I can live with that, right? Fix problems like the Sky Striker. They fixed the thing with the new HasLab version, right? That fix, you have to pay a premium for that fix. You know, again, Sky Striker, what, 20, 25 bucks back in the day when it came out? I don't even think it was that much. I think it was like 18. You know, $20 for a Gray Skull, $80 today. You know, even if you look at Star Wars X-Wing, right? An X-Wing, when they came out, those new X-Wings, right? They were like $100, $125. Okay, 150 is about as most I would pay. Just like when I was talking about the play sets, 150 is the most I'm going to pay for something of that price point. You know, if this isn't, we're not talking about the flag here, we're not talking about Eternia here, we're talking about a $25 item in 1983, 84, 85, in the year 2020s, right? Let's just adjust for inflation. Let's say it's 4 times as much. Okay, we'll even go crazy and say it's 6 times as much. That's 8, 7, 6. No, 6 times as much, right? That's $150, right? It shouldn't be 8 times as much. You know, quit saying, hey, you have to adjust for inflation, so let's totally skew inflation prices to some astronomical figure, right? And that's all I really gotta say. So I just wanted to lay down that groundwork in this episode and say that's where I'm coming from when I look at any of these action figures, right? I'm probably going to reiterate every time I talk about one. I'm going to say, hey, look, why didn't they do this? You know, so we'll have a little bit of that. Like I said, well, I'm going to do some stories, some stuff, personal recollections to tell you what happened back in the day when I first got this stuff and where I'm at now with these things. I'm at 32 minutes. He seemed to be getting long. I'm going to try to keep him down. But like I said, I start ranting on this stuff. Just real quick, I got him up there. You can see him. I don't want to move the camera. But I got the Ghostbusters, the Kenner Ghostbusters up there put out by Hasbro. That was done right. He put out all 4 Ghostbusters, right? Then you put out Slimer and the Stay Puft. Then you put out the Ecto one. And then they put out a couple, the toilet guy and the eyeball guy. It's like you put those guys out, right? That's how they pretty much came out originally, right? Why can you do it with them, which wasn't as popular as a line like G.I. Joe, arguably. Maybe it was. I don't think it was. Why can't you do that with G.I. Joe? It just seems like G.I. Joe is the redheaded stepchild of all action figures now. Is it because it's the military? Is it because it's pro-USA and nobody seems to be pro-USA anymore? I don't know what it is. I'm not going to even imagine that I know what's going on there. But I think they could do it better. Let's do this again, and let's do it better. Maybe not now. Maybe do it 5 years from now. Maybe do it 10 years from now. I'd like to see it before I die. Them do it correctly, but who knows? All right. Let's wrap this up, and I'll come back tomorrow and give you Friday's episode, which will be episode 5. I still don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try not to rant as much, but you know what? The rants are going to come out regardless. I'm passionate about this stuff. It gets my blood pressure up, so may not be a good thing. But all right, I will catch you guys tomorrow. Take care.